as a mentor, what do you feel your mentees are looking for, either expressed or unexpressed? What are they coming to you? And Sean, feel free to chime in from your prior experience. And it doesn't even have to be academic mentoring. It could be any kind of mentoring. Hello, Jessica. We're a small group. If you're in a position to start your video, that's terrific. If not, that's fine too. So I've posed a question about what are your mentees looking for? Just unmute. I think if you can keep yourselves unmuted, I don't think you're going to be disturbing anyone. Go ahead. Hi, Jessica. Molly, did you raise your hand, or I wasn't sure?
I can't hear Sean. Can you all hear him?
Are you speaking, Sean?
He wasn't speaking a minute ago.
Oh.
But I also don't know everybody, so I was going to ask.
Introductions.
It might be strange as people come in to have folks keep introducing themselves.
Well, I think people will join in the first 5 minutes and probably not pass. So Molly, you want to kick off the introductions?
Sure. I am Molly Bassett in the Department of Religious Studies, and this is, I think, my 11th year at Georgia State. I'm an associate professor, and I was tenured in 2015 and became chair in 2017. I feel like I'm in a position still to receive more mentoring, but I find myself also beginning to mentor more, so I'm in between.
As a department chair, it's part of the job sometimes. So yeah. Jessica, would you introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm a brand new assistant professor in the Neuroscience Institute here at Georgia State. And Nancy is my chair and my mentor. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm hoping to learn more about mentoring my future students. I don't have any, well, I guess I have one rotating right now. So excited to learn more. Ooh.
That's awesome. Thank you. Welcome to GSU, Jessica. Sean, could you reintroduce yourself to the ones who are just joining? There we go. You don't look like you're muted, but we can't hear you.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I've been talking to myself for a long time this morning. I apologize for that. So my name is Sean Dotson. I'm a new assistant professor as well in the Neuroscience Institute. Before I came here, I took a bit of a circuitous route to end up here now. So I started out as a faculty member at the University of Florida College of Medicine in the Department of Neuroscience. Then I went to the dark side for a little while, left and went and worked in industry for about 5 years. I was director of innovation for ingredient research and external technology acquisition at Coca-Cola. And thanks to Nancy and a lot of hard work from her colleagues in the Neuroscience Institute, I was able to sort of come back and rejoin academia. And I wanted to come today to learn a little bit more about mentoring, particularly because I have never really worked in the type of academic institution that I'm at today. So the College of Medicine was completely different. It was mostly medical students. It's a completely different ball of wax. And then working in industry is, upside down and wacko and just not even, anywhere about what I might be doing going forward. So that's why I'm here today, to try to learn a little bit more about mentoring in this sort of academic environment.
That was actually, I think I remember you saying that was one of your frustrations about being in a medical school, is you didn't have the opportunity to mentor.
Absolutely. That is true.
Nancy, would you introduce yourself to those who may not know you?
Yeah. So I'm Nancy Forger, the chair of the Neuroscience Institute, and I've been at Georgia State for 8 years. So I think of my mentoring roles as mentoring faculty, but also I have a fairly large lab of about 12 people, so I do a lot of mentoring that way. I'll be stepping down as chair soon, and I'm going to be Jessica's mentor, so I'm looking forward to that.
Lovely. And welcome, Jennifer. Could you introduce yourself? So nice to see you after a while.
Sure. Hi, Kavita and Nancy. I'm Jennifer McCoy. I'm a professor in political science, and I've been at Georgia State for over 30 years. So I have a lot of different mentoring roles, PhD students, assistant professors coming in, students, young people I know, interns, lots of roles. So I've done a lot of mentoring. I just thought it might be helpful to hear some more tips to improve.
Absolutely. And in fact, this is perfect segue to, when you were saying you've done a lot of mentoring, and I'm sure Nancy and Molly, you're sort of been mentored, but also been beginning to have to mentor as a chair. What are some of the reasons, or what are some of the needs that students or faculty come to you for when they come to you for mentoring? And I would think about both expressed as well as unexpressed needs. Just unmute yourself and call them out, just since, again, we're a small group.
The first thing that came to my mind was inspiration. And I guess, and also role model.
Others?
They ask for a lot of career advice, whether within the university, promotion, that kind of thing, or students and others for career advice.
Direction, right? How do I go about doing X, Y, or Z? Just, basic direction.
Yeah, building on both what Sean and Jennifer said, I think also procedures, like how to get from point A to point B, whether it's writing a thesis or going up for promotion. And clarification about policies and procedures, like that we received something recently about if our work outside the university kept us from doing our jobs. And I had lots of questions about, well, what about this talk I give? And, clarification of things like that.
Absolutely. You want to chime in, Jessica, based upon your experience on the other side or as a mentor, either one?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Nancy is definitely my role model, so she nailed it down there. And I ask her a lot of questions about day-to-day functioning as a new assistant professor. But I guess me being a mentor, which so far I have, I am mentoring a graduate student currently, and I think so far definitely direction, as Sean said, and questions about career is always very important, even with a lot of the undergrads I've mentored. So yeah, I think writing recommendation letters and those kinds of things are obviously a big part of being a mentor. But yeah, I think I agree with what everyone said for sure.
I think these are just awesome. I'm going to just temporarily mute you all. And do unmute yourself whenever you want to chime in. I just do this to keep the background noise down. One of the reasons that I thought of offering this session is that as mentors, and we are all mentors in some fashion or the other, regardless of our seniority level in the organization, we're sort of faced with some very simple questions. What's the process on this? What policy? Where, is there a journal that accepts this kind of research? Which is it that we have a quick answer to? At the same time, there will be questions like, what career direction should I take? Where you have to be careful. You might say, gosh, you're really not going to make it in academia, or which you really don't know, or you don't need to be saying. And we sort of put in a little corner as to how do we answer that, short of freezing and saying, I don't know. And in the more broad things like being inspiring, sometimes students come, to play a role model. Sometimes students or faculty they want a sense of community. They want perhaps some validation, perhaps they want accountability. And yes, you can always say, yeah, go get it. You go, But from a mentee's point of view, it can often feel unsatisfying. Even if you say, I really think you should go that direction, and their mind will say, I don't know. And there's so many stories of students or faculty mentees who've left mentoring sessions saying, I kind of felt worse than I came in with. And as mentors, sometimes we've given our best advice and we've given our best, rah-rah speech. And you know that person's left unsatisfied. And what I thought is missing in our training as mentors, if we ever get that training, is something that I am learning from my work as a professional coach. And that is the art of listening. And what I'd like to focus our conversation on, I'm going to begin screen sharing, which I don't like because it takes away my view of you all. But I just have 2 or 3 slides that I'm going to share, and I'm going to sort of jump back and forth. And what I'd like to start with is sort of laying out 3 levels of listening and have you be thinking, where do I fall? And so let me start with the sharing here. Let me maximize. I'm going to leave it like this. I think it's big enough that you can hopefully see it, and I can still see your faces in the corner. If I put it in the presentation mode, I'll lose all of you. So I'd like to talk about 3 levels of listening. And I'm going to interrupt myself to say I'm going to email all my slides to you. I mean, all 4 of them. And I might even add a few. So if you can't jot these down fast, don't worry about it. I'll do it right after this. So think about level 1. Internal is where we're listening, but the attention is mainly on the words that people are saying. And a lot of our listening is judging in relation to self. Okay, so what advice should I give her? What career direction should I suggest? Where should they, they've got this issue with the publication. What should I tell them? You're kind of, that's where you quickly get redirected. And it's often how it's applies to me as a listener. In fact, I'd love to demo level 1 listening. So someone, I want to volunteer amongst the 5 of you, or 4 of you. Anyone, just raise your hand. Nancy, I can't see you, so or just unmute yourself. I'm not going to put you on the hot spot.
I'm willing.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. So level 1 listening, nothing relates. So you're my mentee, but I wouldn't say you're mentee because this is not even going to be a mentoring example. So Nancy, tell me, what are your plans this weekend?
Oh, well, trying to decide whether to attend this 3-hour meditation on Saturday or not. I'd like to do it, but I feel like that's my one day to myself, so I'm not sure I want to.
Yeah, so what kind of meditation did you say?
It's Vipassana meditation. And I'm in this meditation group that's in Atlanta.
Wow, yeah, meditation. I've often thought about doing meditation. I just haven't had time for it, And I've heard about Vipassana, and people have said good and bad things about it. But what I'm thinking of doing, Nancy, is I'm actually more interested in doing something like just mindfulness. Those exercises are just easier for me. And, I don't know about meditation. I'm going to have to think about that one. What happened here?
Yeah, it went from me to you.
It was all about me. You started it. You may have wanted to say a little bit more, but I hijacked it. It could just have been, I'm having some struggles with my major professor or my department chair, and I wonder what or I'm not being able. Let's take this. I'm struggling with getting my first grant proposal out, and I wanted to ask And if the mentor is doing level 1 listening, it would quickly be, oh, well, when I was a junior professor, I immediately, I didn't waste time. I quickly researched this and blah, 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 how I did it. And when my major professor asked me, I told them this. It leaves that mentee very, even though they're coming to you for your experience, that redirection, it becomes all about the mentor. So far too often, and you can probably think of people, they do level 1 listening. Okay, let's look at level 2, which is more focused, where you are now committing to listening, and your goal is to really understand the other. You're paying attention to tone, pace, how are they saying it? Not just what are they saying, how are they saying it? And you're approaching it totally with some curiosity. So it's not with immediate judgment, but it's complete curiosity. I'm going to pull this here so I can see all of you. Let's do a quick demo of level 2 listening. Volunteer? Sean? Super. So Sean, what are your plans this weekend? What are you planning to do?
Let's see, we have dinner plans tonight with some friends, friends of my wife, and I don't really want to go, but that's part of marriage, so I'm gonna go. But yeah, that's my plan, and it's apropos to what Nancy said. Sometimes you want some time for yourself after a busy week, but duty calls.
I liked how you said that you have some dinner with friends, and you quickly qualified it to say dinner with friends of my wife.
That's certainly true.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
So these are colleagues of my wife that they invited us to their patio tonight to sit out and have some dinner and have some wine and hang out and sort of just spend some time with friends and whatnot. And it's definitely something I'm looking forward to. But it's I definitely like my Sean time, and don't get enough of it, unfortunately. So
if you weren't going, what would you be doing in Sean time?
Oh, probably sitting on the couch with my puppies and a glass of wine and watching a good movie.
That
sounds like heaven. Yeah.
It sounds like heaven. Yeah. So we could go on, but do you see the sense of slight difference in those two conversations?
Certainly.
Where if it had gone another way, or they said, "What are you cooking?" and what it could have. There were entryways for me to learn more about you. And I suspect your feeling from that conversation would be very different than the feeling perhaps Nancy got. She started all excited to talk about her weekend, and it was hijacked where it wasn't about her. And the same thing can happen with a student as well. So, I'm unsure about what's, where things are going, or I'm having a hard time getting this grant proposal out. In level 2, you could certainly say, well, what's preventing it from happening? Would be a good question. As if, you mean you haven't got one out yet? There's a big difference, or this is how I did it. Level 3, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. Do you see the window with your pictures on it when I share? Okay, I wasn't sure how this, okay. So level 3, we can all aspire to. It's one that I still am working on, where you kind of even go beyond this intentional listening to where you are bringing in all your intuition and paying attention to both what's said and not said, and trying to get a holistic understanding. So it often will not happen in a short conversation. As you continue the conversation, you may begin to see entryways. I'll give you a very simple example from something recently in one of my coaching clients, where I felt I came close to that sort of aspiration of the global listening. So she was talking about what was some of the things coming up next week. She says, well, here's all the stuff I'm doing, and I'm, the way she put it, to say, yeah, I'm all ready. I'm looking forward to doing, getting this report out. I'm going to start working on this grant. I'm, and I'm going to be meeting with this colleague to discuss our common project. And so what I heard her saying was these are activities she's looking forward to. And then when she said, I'm looking forward to talking to my colleague about the project we're doing on, I just saw her hand going up and doing this, And I just asked her, just curious, when you said that, I noticed you started massaging your shoulder. And she says, oh yeah, my back has been tight all week. And when I just said that, for some reason, I just sort of felt the twinge. And I asked her to talk more about that. And it turns out she wasn't looking forward to that conversation. And, I could have dropped, I'm looking forward to this. Got it, check, you're all set. But this opened up an entire avenue of what was going on in that relationship or in that professional conversation. And you neuroscientists will sort of recognize some of this, where, a lot of the thing, a lot of our listening is done with whatever the prefrontal cortex, that's what we're thinking. Yet her body was reacting in a particular way that in this case, I was able to catch, and it led to a very productive line of conversation. Let me stop there and just ask any thoughts or questions or observations on this. And then maybe let me stop sharing for a second so I can see you. Go ahead, Nancy. Oh, yeah, please unmute yourself.
For a second, I couldn't find it. Wow, so I had never thought about this, that I had a PhD at the Herb Center who was a pretty amazing advisor, and so many of his advisees stayed in science and succeeded. And I actually, though, so I would say that he came close to a level 3 listener. And it's interesting because sometimes I went into his office and I wasn't looking for that. I was being surfacey, and I often felt like I was now sitting on the couch almost, because he would go deep, and not just take a flippant answer that I gave. On the other hand, he had a very powerful, even though it made me a little uncomfortable at times, he had a very powerful impact on me. And I never really thought about it in terms of listening style.
It's such an amazing, because it's not just listening. They're saying, I care about you. I care about you. Others?
Yeah, I wanted to say I've been, especially my PhD students, sometimes come to me under just a tremendous amount of stress. And so sometimes I just, ask them to sit back and say, okay, let's just try this breathing exercise. And I just ask them to do it with me. And I say, okay, just raise your hands up to your side, breathe in, close your eyes, and then breathe out slowly and let them float down. Do that 3 times, and then ask them how they feel. And they seem to really appreciate that. It helps them then get in a position where they can actually talk about what's stressing them. Do you think that's all right?
Oh, I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. Very often people come into your meeting, even if they aren't heavily stressed, students may have run out of class, come out of the lab, run to you, a faculty member is just rushing, and they plop down on your seat or on your video screen, and you almost see them panting, and very often I just say, just this minute, and I've done this as well. Let's both take 90 seconds. It doesn't take a long time. Just, breathe in, breathe out, feel your feet, bring your attention to what's happening. And, they sometimes say, gosh, what a touchy-feely, what's new age advising going on here. But you tell them, I mean, you're on, half of you are neuroscientists here, and you can actually talk about the, parasympathetic nervous system or whatever, and help them calm, and then you have their attention. I mean, I'm not teaching these days, but if I was back in the classroom, I would do this for my class, So you have to decide where, but I think it's a powerful way of doing that. We bring them all in. Are there any other thoughts or comments? Yeah, Molly.
I have a question about the global type of listening. What are so I think about how different my students' experiences are from my own and my faculty colleagues too, not just because academic lives are idiosyncratic, but because people come from very different places. So how do you develop an intuition that isn't making assumptions about what you intuit in a situation? Are there other, I mean, like the idea of attention to what is said or not said, that seems more concrete to me than sort of going with your gut in a conversation.
Yes, for me, the intuition is only to allow me to frame a question. It is not to make assumptions. But in this case, it could be just fine. It allowed me to say what's going on. So nothing, just fine. I just need to, you just leave that well enough alone. So that would be my response. You're not necessarily jumping to an assumption, but it allows you to be curious about something in a way that you wouldn't be if you're just listening to the words. Any other sort of responses to Molly or perspectives on that?
So I just have a question for you, and I'm going to push back a little bit on something you said, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. When I pick a mentor, most of the time I would really not want them not to share with me their experiences or that's the whole purpose. I respect that person a lot, and I want to know their sort of opinion or their feedback or what they went through when they went through that. That's sort of the whole point in a way. And so to not talk about it at all seems a little odd to me, because that's part of the reason why, the mentors that I've had that have been really sort of top have been people who shared a lot with me. And I want that. I don't want necessarily to always be focused on me. That's why I picked you, because I respect you a lot. And I really want to know what you think about said situation.
I think that's very good. I'm so glad you raised that. Because what I want to be sure I say is powerful listening, consider it as a tool in your arsenal, not the body of what mentoring is. There are many, many others, if somebody comes and says, where should I apply, where should I send this article? And you know the answer. Yet you could say, what thoughts come to you? I mean, you're being disingenuous. I'd be really annoyed. Come on, you know what? You have the answer. So I think consider this as a tool and decide when you deploy it, when you're not. Certainly when somebody comes a bit distraught, when you sense that there are layers of experience that are underlying what they're saying. But absolutely, in many cases, they come and ask you, hey, Dr. McCoy, can you tell me how you've navigated these situations? By all means, you've been given an invitation. That's what they want. You absolutely should share it. And so part of our challenges as mentors is not even challenge. Our job as a mentor is to grow our mentoring tools. And you got to have policies and procedures, because those are yes, no, go there, do that. This is the office you need to talk to, all the way through. I don't know the answer to that question. Let's talk about it together. So consider this today's session is equipping you with one additional, and I would say very powerful arsenal And I would say it would go beyond mentoring. I mean, it's talking with your family members. I mean, you can deploy it in many other situations. So does that help answer your question, Sean?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I mean, I'll tell you, this sort of like one of my persons I was mentoring, I guess you could call it, came to me with a kind of a pretty complex question. And I started doing my level 2 focused listening trick of, well, where do you asking these powerful questions and, what kinds of things are open to you? I mean, and I'm sort of preempting some of my next slide. And then she just stopped me and she says, Kavita, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be coming here and laying my bag. I need to know, what do you think I should do? So she just cut through it. So, I said, all right, switch. So, you can overdo it and people will let you know. So developing that intuition a little bit, but just add this to your arsenal. Don't over deploy it. Just make the call when to use this or not. Anything else? I've got just like 1 or 2 more slides that I would like to share. Okay to go forward? All right. So I wanted to sort of leave you with a bit more of a concrete listening tips. And again, I'll sort of share this with you via email as we get done. So as you go into a conversation, and this is even before, it may well be that in that conversation you end up talking more about yourself, or it may end up being that you're giving very specific advice. But there's no harm as you go into a mentoring conversation or any kind of conversation with another person to really take a minute to set your intention. So I take a minute before every meeting, in fact, even before this, the other person about listening, to just sort of ground myself to say, okay, I'm entering this with my eyes, heart, gut open to receive what I'm hearing, and also recognizing your unconscious filters ahead of time. So there could be someone you're working with, a grad student who is just not delivering, is missing all the deadlines, and you're saying, oh God, here's a problem person. If for a few, minutes for the duration of that conversation, you could suspend that, I think it will open you up more to hearing really what's going on. So think about that. In powerful listening, focus on the person and not the situation. And I would say this with, recognizing what Sean has said, because sometimes students want, what do I do in this situation? Yet in many often, as mentors, I think we should also be thinking about not just the situation they're in, but their perceptions of the situation they're in. So focusing on the person, someone's having is in a difficult bind. Yes, you should be thinking about how you can extricate them out of that bind, but really get their thoughts on what are you feeling? There's a stressful situation. Tell me how you're approaching it. What are your pros and cons? What do you think about that situation as much as the situation? And that also takes a little bit of reorienting. It also involves number 4, bringing in curiosity and asking open-ended questions. Could you give me close-ended versus open-ended? What is a close-ended question? Or what is an open-ended question? Any thoughts or responses? Or
Open something like, can you say more again?
that could be an open-ended question. What's an example of a close-ended question?
Yeah, I was just
Go ahead, Jessica.
Did you do it this way or did you do it that way?
Yeah. How did, yes or no question? Did
Yeah,
you submit the grant?
Do it.
Did you do it? Yes or no? Other examples of either close-ended or open-ended questions?
I'm going to have to leave, Kavita, although this is much more interesting than what I have to go to.
No, I go with the open intention, focus on listening, blah, blah, blah. But I'll send you the slides. In fact, there's just one other slide I'll touch upon before we wrap up. So thank you so much for joining.
Someone just yesterday sent me a little thing about mentoring from a Nobel laureate. And if you guys are all interested, I think I know all of you, so I'll send you all that. I thought it was aspirational.
Actually, I received that too from somebody, and I can actually attach it when I send my slides. So let me make a note to do that. And it focuses very much on graduate students and postdocs and trainees, as opposed to fellow faculty. So I think Sean and Jessica, you might find it particularly helpful. And it touches on the broader kinds of issues that Sean, you were raising. What about if they want to know the experience? So between this session, some of the advice there, you'll get a lot of good tools, I think. Thank you for reminding me of that, Nancy, and for joining.
See you.
See you. Yes, so close-ended questions that we often ask, they always have specific answers. Yes, no. Whereas open-ended questions open up the possibilities. They don't necessarily close you off. Close-ended questions often also shut down a conversation. Why didn't you do that? What made you think? What made you forget that? It's like you almost feel a bit judged. You feel they put you on defense sometimes. Whereas open-ended questions really don't necessarily have a judgment, or good open-ended questions aren't judgmental. And they open possibilities. So close-ended questions literally narrow things down to a yes or no, and you're sort of almost boxed in. And open-ended questions fan things out. I'd love to share with you some examples. I mean, that was actually what I had, and I was expecting a larger group. I wasn't sure. So I had a breakout activity, but we are a small breakout group ourselves. So I'll sort of skip that and share with you. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to do screen sharing here. I'll share with you examples of some very powerful, what I would call powerful open-ended questions. Let's see. Are you able to see it without, or is okay. So here are just a few of the many list of questions you could make. What's your best thinking? What else might work? I'm sorry. I'm still getting my comfort zone with WebEx here. Yes. So what else might work? What conclusions do you draw? What would success look like? And in a way, helping tease out what else is possible when they feel they're in a people that feel that they're being cornered. And I'll send you a list of these. Hopefully over time you can develop your own. I love the last one. What can I do to help you? Rather than assume this is what they need from me. And I've been surprised when I think that they need A and they actually need B or C or D. Observations, thoughts.
I just wanted
just
to
gonna
say this.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, Jessica.
Sorry, Jennifer. You go ahead, Jennifer.
Jennifer and then Jessica. And I think Sean, you take too. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to say the first, when you were asking for the examples, it reminded me of talking with my children at dinner when they come home from school. And if you ask the question, it doesn't sound like a closed-ended question, but it always was, how was your day? And you would get one word answer. So it sounds like an open-ended question, but it isn't. So I changed it to, we would do at dinner, go around and do high-low, where we talk about, everybody would give a high point of the day and a low point of the day. And that was so much more interesting and informative.
Yeah. It's a more specific question. It's a more specific, and there is something in that because it shows curiosity. It's not a, hey, how you doing? Which they could have said the high and low point, but you've asked a specific question that says, the signals to them, I'm curious. I really want to know. Jessica.
Yeah, well, going off of that response, I think the reason that is that people always just automatically respond fine, right? The one word answer. So I think you showing that you were asking a different question really showed you cared. So that was just my response to your comment, Jennifer. But I was going to say, what was I going to say? Oh, so this whole framework that you've laid out is really helpful, I think, for really personalizing for each individual mentee, whereas, some people can go in with the same expectations and the same process of mentoring with each student. But I think this is great because you're really listening and you're, using what you're learning from listening to pivot to whatever they need. So I think that's really nice about what you've taught us today.
I love that you brought up something I'd sort of gone over, is glossed over, but personalizing it. There's no situation that fits all. You will be blessed, I'm sure, to have students who got their act together. They know what they're doing. Come to you for a very, very specific question. What reagent should I use, or where can I go for this kind of, which people have been doing this. Give it to them. You don't have to keep them there for an hour,
Right.
So, but this may come helpful in a situation like what Jennifer, you described, where somebody's just really anxious, they got a high anxiety, they're stressed, you're trying to bring them out and help work themselves out of a hole in a way. That's not the only place I would say, but it is one of the places where this can be helpful. Sean, you were about to say something. I didn't know if you were unmuting or.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask that question, but I wasn't sure how much longer we're going to be on the call.
Since I've dropped the breakout exercises, we will. It's open conversation now.
So I was kind of curious, really more out of my own sort of curiosity than anything. For those of you that are more senior in your positions, how do you differentiate between the mentoring you give to junior faculty versus students? I assume that that's a completely different ball of wax, and I just out of curiosity, I was wondering how you guys approached the sort of two different groups.
Molly, you want to take a stab at that?
I don't know that I have an answer, but I was thinking through the same thing, Sean. I was thinking about, I've been the director of graduate studies in our program and chair too, and so I feel like in both roles, I'm an advisor to many people, but I think mentoring has a different quality to it. And like you were saying, some people seek out a mentor. So, it could be that somebody from another institution has sought me out, or I'm seeking them out. But I also find that I'm like the default person for a lot of people. And that's okay. Like it comes with the territory, right? But I think I was gonna actually ask Kavita a version of your question, like how what kinds of boundaries do you draw around the time you can give? I mean, this takes so much energy. I think that's why the level one, many of us default to that when somebody runs into the office and we haven't had time to take a breath or prepare for the meeting or think through, oh, this is student so and so or colleague so and so, and like these are the kinds of things that have worried them in the past or we've celebrated in the past. So how do you and then also I feel like many people just need to be heard. Like they just need someone to listen, and yet there are many pressures on the day, right? I mean, so I'm gonna bump this question on up to Kavita.
Yeah. No, it's an absolutely awesome question. And Jennifer, let me turn to you on, since you have some experience, and then I'll sort of add my thoughts on it, because there is not a single answer, as you can imagine. What are your thoughts, Jen, on what Molly's asked, but also more broadly about grad students versus faculty advising?
I think certainly there's a difference, as Molly identified, between mentoring and advising, and so that's the first thing. If it's simply advising, what courses should I take, that kind of thing. And then there's also a difference between the mentors that we're assigned, like we're assigned some graduate students and faculty to be mentors too. So we know it's identified as a mentoring relationship. We're also assigned, or students come to us to be their faculty advisor, and it's a slightly different role, but I find that often those, particularly PhD students that I'm advising their dissertations, it turns into much more of the mentoring, deep listening kind of thing, because I'm spending more time with them. They are under stress, and so I do practice that kind of stuff, and the breathing and all of that. For faculty, it is slightly different, because the levels are different, so you don't have the hierarchy, and so that's another difference that kind of comes into my mind, is the hierarchy of the relationship. But I have. I'm going to give you one example, and I'm really curious to get Kavita's thoughts on the way I handled it. A female faculty member was considering, what came to me to talk about whether she should go up for full professor or not. Was she ready? Should I, when we look at her vita and all that, and so I did, and I had two thoughts in my mind. One, I was afraid she wouldn't make it. I mean, she was like right on the bubble, but I also knew if she were a male, she'd go for it, because the men just do. And so I didn't want to discourage her. She would have the possibility to get it. So what I told her was, I said, look, I want to encourage you, because I know a lot of women feel like they've got to be perfect before they go for it. And, we're never going to be in that position. And so when you get this, but I have a little bit of concern about the way some of these things might be interpreted. So what I would advise is that you think about what would be your reaction if you're turned down. Could you accept being turned down, knowing that you've got another chance? This is full professor. And, would you be okay with that, your psyche? And if you think it would be extremely devastating to you, then perhaps wait another year. Wait till, because we know you have this book that's probably going to get accepted pretty soon, but it's just not accepted yet. So I was doing that. So I was keeping in mind this, I think there really is a gender difference in all this stuff. And so that was just the way I handled that. So I wondered Kavita's response to that, and then just
I think that sounds wonderful. I mean, this also comes up a lot when someone says, oh, there's this job opening for an administrator somewhere else, or another position. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I should apply or not. And GSU may like this or not, but my advice is always, I mean, if you've thought about it enough that it's entered your mind, what do you have to lose by applying? Which is what you said, is it going to totally stress you? I mean, is it going to crush you so badly if you didn't get it? Because what there is to gain is so much, because the act of applying for promotion, the act of applying for a job itself changes you. You start visualizing yourself in a different place. You change, and I say it for the positive. So I think that was well said. And then back to Molly's question about, the time. I mean, you're just on the fly. And what I would say is, no, you cannot make every conversation a 1-hour conversation. You just absolutely can't. In some cases where you see someone is it involves some triaging, I would say. In many cases where someone is just, you sense that they need your help or need to be heard, I would say, can you come back later? Here's, let's schedule a different time. With others, they'd love to talk more. So you do have to do some triaging. I would also say this is, it's so interesting that Nancy Forger started the session in our little demo talking about her meditation. And, we use the word practice for meditation or mindfulness or yoga or Tai Chi. This too is a practice. You work on it. You can do it in short spurts. You can do it. It doesn't need to take an hour. It may just take 1 or 2 questions. So my invitation to you is to begin to be intentional in practicing good listening, because then it'll become more of a automatic to go, as opposed to oh, now let me get my notes and sit for an hour. And it doesn't need to be that way. So just kind of pick it. And I think more for faculty in some ways, there's, but grad students are sometimes, as Sean, you said, they just, want to know, how did you do it? How did you navigate this? Tell me, you are imparting info a bit more. For fellow faculty who, they may be even senior to you or it doesn't, there's not even a seniority. All of us have a hunger to be heard. I'll give you a very, maybe silly, maybe thoughtful, but here's what I want to ask you all to do this. So take your left hand and clench it really, really tightly, as tight as you can. And now take your right hand and try to open it. Force the fingers open, push it as much as you can. So this is a mentor or faculty department chair trying to get something out of that, need something from that other person. Tell me what's happening to you? What's happening to your hand?
It's very stressful.
I don't know, my heartbeat picked up a little bit. My hand clenched even harder. My nails are now digging into my palm. So now take your right hand and place it under, very gently hold your left hand. Just hold it. And what's happening now to your left hand?
It's relaxed.
Fingers slowly start relaxing. It is a very, take it as you will. It's an analogy as what powerful listening could achieve. It totally, especially in stressful situations or where you want to stimulate some thought. Where somebody comes, they talk, you don't really ever give them an answer. But often the next day or the day after, they'll say, after our conversation, a couple of things occurred to me that. And how wonderful is that? I didn't have to come up with a solution. I didn't even know the solution, but I got them thinking in ways that they left without an answer, but you got them thinking about the possibilities. Or getting a faculty member just to calm down, it's a form of mentoring. I see that we are just come to the end of the hour. Are there any final questions or thoughts or observations before I wrap it up and send you all the article that Nancy referenced as well as my notes?
Yeah, thank you, Kavita.
Well, thank you all for joining.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So nice to meet you, Sean, Jessica. See you again, Molly and Jennifer. And if you have any questions, holler them out to me. This is an area of great passion for me.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.